What?
What up, punks?
That was the cue.
The fricka was the cue. What up, punks? Welcome back to another episode of the Pop Culture Punks podcast, where we bring pop culture to the pit every week.
Boy.
This week we'll be discussing the new Venom movie. Is it good? Does it deserve to stand among the other hero films of this decade? Or will we be searching for an antidote to this week's Venom?
No.
Before we get into that, what have you been up to, Josh? Joshy boy?
Another boring week, but I had some bomb music finds this week. So Lupe, I guess technically it came out last week, but Lupe's new album Drogas came out, and I was jamming that hard. That man, the man can spit. He's got narrative ability. There's just so much depth to his music, and his flow is phenomenal.
Like, check that out.
It's fantastic.
Oh, Drogas Wave.
Drogas Wave, yeah, is the name of the album.
24 songs?
Yeah, it's long, but it's...
I think I missed this one last week because the Lil Wayne thing dropped.
Sure,
and,
yeah.
What's his name? Dropped an album, too.
Yeah,
forget.
So it's
a lot of rap last week.
Yep. Yeah, so it's not like a new album by any means in terms of like it's not relevant to it came out this week, but I've been listening to it since last week, and dang man, like he just tackles a lot of really that fresh frozen pizza. Still like
he tackles a fresh frozen pizza.
Tackles a fresh frozen pizza real hard. But no, he tackles a lot of really deep topics like slavery and the effects on the present day, and just, but he does it in a way that's just so artistically brilliant, and just the narratives and his lyrical ability. Like Lupe to me is one of the best ever. Like he's up there. Just sheer lyrical talent, and the beats and the music are like they just fit. Like everything just fits. Like he's not rapping to like a trap beat, about like something like that. Like he's just it's just phenomenal. Like he has a whole song where basically he raps about different people being different sea animals, and it's just like it's one of the most catchy things I've ever heard. Or it's just like the lobster's my it's like the seahorse is holding us down, and it's just it's fantastic. The jellyfish rolling around, so good. So there's that, and then another hip hop album which I was just telling you before we started, but holy crud! Brian Welch on Instagram, who he's the lead guitarist for Korn. He shouted out Trevor McNevin, who is the lead singer of the band 1,000 Foot Crutch, and he was like, "Hey, Trevor's got a new project out, and he's got a new album. Check it out." And so McNevin's new artist thing, his side project is called I Am the Storm, and it's basically like a rap album. But holy crud! Like I knew some of their old stuff is very hip hoppy, and then they kind of transitioned into more. I don't know. They're not like new metal, but they're not
I
like
Am the Storm. Or?
Yeah, I Am the Storm. And then they have so early TFK 1,000 Foot Crutch was super hip hoppy. Like there's a lot of straight up,
very
just
late
very
90s, early 2000s new metal style.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then as they progressed into The Flame and All of Us, and
it almost became more like post grunge sort of. 3 Days Grace style.
Yes, yeah, they're very, very akin to that.
Yeah.
But then this album is I would put him. This might be blasphemous. I would put him right next to. I would equate this album to NF. It's really good. I think I'm more just surprised because some of his old stuff I've listened to the hip hop, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go. But just some of his flow and some of his speed, and I'm just this is the dude who made one of my most hype jams ever. Move by TFK is one of my favorite songs ever, and this is the same dude, and this is the same dude who's out rapping some of the top hip hop artists that I mean pejoratively, that people are just they're popular even though they suck, but he's out rapping all of them, and I was just dang, you go, Trevor.
Interesting.
Get good. But
get good.
Yeah, so it's good. So I'll play you a jam after, but
cool.
But yeah, other than that, Gloria and I have just been rolling through Brooklyn Nine-Nine, so we're on the last season that they have out now. But it did get picked up again, so all you Brooklyn Nine-Nine
Back
fans,
next spring, I think.
yeah, so that'll be coming out. And we just saw, apparently they didn't, for whatever reason, they didn't release a new episode of Attack on Titan last week, but they released a new one this week.
Mark told me none of the new anime shows did last week because of the storms. That
makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, Zach,
I haven't been keeping up on it, so I because I was watching Game of Thrones, so I watched 2 episodes today, and I'm just like, oh, frick.
Yeah.
It's getting nuts.
For Game of Thrones or Attack on Titan?
Attack on Titan.
What episode number are you on in that season?
I think I just finished 9.
Okay.
So I have
so you only have 2 left
to
go.
So
I haven't seen 11, which is the newest one that just came out today.
Before the one that came out today.
Yeah. The next one isn't like super crazy, but you've basically seen all this stuff so far that's just like what? Crazy. Like what? Yeah. So, yeah, it's frick, dude. Yeah. Just the psychological and philosophical questions that there's. I feel like what's cool and what I love is that there were concrete enemies that they had to face in each of the seasons, and I feel like now there's still concrete enemies that they have to face and there's still some mystery around, but they're almost moving into a philosophical battleground of like, what do you do with free will? What's the best way to make a utopia? How do you...
And then who even is the enemy?
Exactly.
Now? Like,
yeah.
Is the enemy is kind of humanity in some ways.
Yep.
So it's like that whole scene.
It's just So it's just like, this show is so freaking good. So, so we've been watching that, and I think that's pretty much the gist. Pretty again, I think it was weird. Like I think I just hit like a gaming slump. Like I had just pounded so hard to get through Spider-Man that I just was like, I don't want to start another game. So I couldn't pick anything else up. But we'll see. I might go back to The Witcher a little bit today. I think I want to get back into actually like making art stuff and not just being like, well, I don't feel energized enough to play games, and I definitely don't feel energized enough to create. So I'm just gonna sit here.
I know that feeling. That's what I've been doing all day today.
Yeah, dude, it's sometimes you need it. Like I know you were traveling yesterday, and then we were in Illinois all day yesterday. Yeah. So I know that'll do it. But did you by chance watch the new South Park?
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, I was just curious.
There's too many shows.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I'll get to it.
So I was just curious if you wanted to chime in. Otherwise, that's it for me.
Yeah. I didn't do a whole lot. I finally finished Game of Thrones, so that was good. I can't wait until the new season next year, the final season.
Sure.
A lot of stuff left unanswered, so it should be interesting to see how they wrap it all up. I've been watching, like basically the 2 days after I finished it, I was just like listening to like conspiracy theories and like different things that people thought might happen based on what has already happened.
Sure.
And I was just like super immersed in all that stuff. So now I'm like, frick, I want to know what happens. So that was good. And then after that, what else happened? Oh, the Man in the High Castle season 3 dropped Friday, so I had a day break because I finished Game of Thrones Wednesday, so I had Thursday off from watching TV. And I thought I would have a little more time to take a break from TV for a bit, but then that dropped, and I was like,
crud,
I need to watch it.
Yeah.
So I started watching that, and then what else did I do? I didn't actually write anything on here. I started that. I watched 2 more episodes of Attack on Titan, like I said, today, and then went to Milwaukee yesterday, so to see Franklin live.
Turner.
That was as good as the last. I've seen him. I can't even count how many times I've seen him now. Probably like 6 times. This is probably the 6th. The openers were actually pretty good too. I forget the name of the first one, but they were kind of like a classic rock infused with like punk rock almost. It was
interesting.
It wasn't something I'd listen to, but it was like in the moment. It was like
you could jive.
Yeah, I could jive to it. And the second band was called Bad Cop, and they were like this all-female like punk band, and it was just like super, just like really punky and like thrashy. It was super good, and they all sang, which was interesting. Like one of them had like a lower punk voice, but then could also sing. It was interesting. And then one of them had like the raspier like NoFX style punk voice, and then one of them had like a higher pitched like sort of almost like
all ranges
emo-ish punk voice. So
that sounds cool.
It was pretty cool.
Bad Cop was that band. Okay.
They were
I'll have to
super
check that
good.
out.
They were super punk, super political. They pretty much said all of the things that I expected a punk band to say in this current climate.
Sure.
So there's a lot of stuff about the Supreme Court stuff, but they were really good. Even Evan liked them because she came to the show with me. So, and then after that was Frank Turner, and he played for like 2 hours, I think. So it was pretty solid. And one of my favorite songs is called "I Am Disappeared," and I emailed him like at 4:30 yesterday, and the show started at 7, I think. So I emailed him saying like, "Hey, sorry this is last minute, but I'm wondering if I could shoot a request in for I Am Disappeared because I know you have a lot of songs now." And that's from like 4 albums ago. So he's kind of like
decent stretch. Yeah.
he's not playing as many older songs anymore. So it's kind of like a crapshoot based like which ones he plays from that album. So I like shot him an email and he ended up playing it. So I sang my lungs out. So I'm going to pretend like I had an influence. He actually emailed me back, which felt kind of cool. So, but yeah, the show was super fun. I'm glad I have a voice today because last night I did not have a voice.
Never do after a show.
No. Yeah. I think the only other time that my voice was that shot, I think was when I saw All American Rejects, A Day to Remember, and Blink-182 play a show, because like all 3 of those bands I know all of their songs pretty much just from like the nostalgia perspective. So I was like, by the time even Blink came on, like my voice is already dead, and I was like, I can't not sing to Blink-182. So but yeah, this show was probably the second most like shot my voice has been in a long time. So it was super fun and super energetic, and it was a different experience because it was assigned seats and there was no pit or anything, or like there was no standing section. Like everybody had seats. So it was weird, even for like the opener band, the punk being punky, it was weird. Everybody's just like sitting there. But it was super fun and everybody still had energy. Like people were still like dancing in their seats and stuff. So, yeah, it was good. But we got back at like 1:30 a.m. So
well, shot.
I was super dead.
Yeah.
Trying to think of if I did anything else. Still plugging away at The Witcher. I think I'm at like 55 hours in now.
Nice.
Still haven't finished the main story yet. I think I'm getting really close though. And then I'll do the 2 expansions probably, and then call it a day for a while and try and play something else.
Yeah, that's one of those games that like I actually just got past the Kira Mora. I forgot how to pronounce her last name, but
Kira Metz.
Yes. So I just finished that portion. That was dope. Like that whole like story sequence of the tower and having to go over there. I was like, this is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like this is fantastic.
Did you do any of the romance stuff, or did you skip on that?
She is not gonna die. So I had to like check. I was like, I don't know if she's like gonna die or not, because I remember you had mentioned something. But
yeah, I killed her.
But based on what I chose, I picked the most moral, most like there was like a thing you could do where because of the situation you basically end up either like fighting her and killing her, or you like basically kind of send her off and like.
See, I didn't know you could do that, so like I was like, I'm not gonna let you kill thousands of people, which was awkward because we had just gotten done like doing it, and then I immediately killed her, and Evan's like, what happened? I'm like, I had to kill her, I'm sorry.
Hey, gotta do the right thing,
Yeah.
But
so you're still pretty early in the game.
Oh yeah. But I think what was eye-opening about finishing that whole sequence was, in a way, I feel very comfortable with The Witcher, picking it up, playing for a good while, and then just like abruptly stopping, because I don't like, whereas with Spider-Man, I was like, okay, like missions are coming in left and right. I kind of got to like crank through it and remember everything. And like, I just kind of want to get it done. It's a collectathon. Whereas this, I actually feel you're like going into the world and you're experiencing like, what goes into that and everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of exploration aspects to it, but it's very easy to just pick up, plug an hour in, and put down in some ways, because there's just so much to do that like if you try and do everything, you're just gonna die basically. Yeah. So it's kind of fun. Like if you have a destination, I'll see like, because sometimes you'll get like waypoints, so I'll see like little question marks on the map. I'm like, I need to get here, and I'm here now. I'm gonna take a little detour down here, check out what this is first, and then swing back over here. So it's kind of like I'm always like exploring a little bit and trying to check out areas. So
yeah, definitely.
It's super fun.
For sure.
And I've got dope Witcher gear now. So
sick.
Yeah.
Tight.
Yeah. So yeah,
I just remember, this was my other thing I was gonna say is, and then we can jump into the Venom review.
Yeah.
Alrighty. that Daredevil trailer, nuts, man. Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Like, I'm going to be binging that show in
I know.
like
I'll probably
2
watch it in like
days.
2 days.
Oh my goodness. Like that was, I was really apprehensive when I started Daredevil, like way back when.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really like the first couple episodes. I know it was a lot of his backstory and his childhood, and you like need to establish that, and it got interesting. Thought second season was better than the first. A lot of people don't agree with that. Whatever. This season looks just nuts. Like, holy crud! It's gonna be spectacular.
I'm mostly stoked to have Vincent D'Onofrio back as like full on Kingpin this time. So and he's got that vibe where he's like he's released because he's like good now, but like he's not good. Like, it's gonna be like the facade, and like Daredevil is just like super brutal now. And and then the guy at the end with his costume on, like who the heck is that? Is that gonna be Bullseye or somebody else?
I think everyone's already kind of like a lot of fans have basically said like, oh, that's so Bullseye. Because
I think there's a scene where he like tosses a baton or something, and
he's like throwing stuff, and it's like nailing people on the forehead and like all these things, and then at that end part, he like Matt catches it, and he's like, "What do we have here?" And it's just like, "Oh, this is gonna be so good!" Yeah. Oh, so excited.
I agree with you.
Fingers crossed. Not gonna lie, I'm biased. I want Frank Castle to come in at some point, even if it's just for like one episode to be like, "Hey, Red, what's going on, Red?" Like that's it.
Yeah, I bet they'll have a little cameo or something. But I think after the second season, they don't want to make it too much about Frank Castle and him again.
Exactly.
It's back to this is Daredevil's story again.
Right.
So
but I just dude, I'm so excited.
Yeah,
it's gonna be dope.
I'm excited for that.
Yep.
And I saw another thing. What I saw was at New York Comic Con, they released another trailer for Aquaman, and I'm actually pretty excited for that. Like,
cool.
They released his actual suit, or like an image of his actual suit with like the orange and the green, and it looks pretty dope. So
sweet.
I'm pretty stoked.
I'll probably see it. I think just to engage with DC stuff, even though I just
don't give up yet, man. Don't give up. I've also been hearing some things about the Titans show, and people are actually saying it's pretty good. Like it's campy, and it's like it has its moments, but like it's actually like a decent show. So I might get the streaming service and check it out. So
I mean, I'm totally on board with all these people doing their own thing, and like especially if their stuff is good, like great, please by all means like make these spin-off things. But I'm hesitant where the industry is going to go into everyone wants their own streaming service just so that they can monopolize their content, and that I'm not going to buy into at all, because I'm not spending $10 just to watch like one thing that this one company makes. But
for sure.
Anyway, before we jump into the Venom 2 or
Venom 2,
we don't even need to get into Venom 2
Sneak
yet.
peek
But
here.
dude, the Into the Spider-Verse clip they like, if you
there's so many new trailers released.
If you are unsure about seeing Venom, literally just see Venom so you can see the like 5-minute long sneak peek or however long it was at the end of the movie of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, because wow, that movie is gonna be spectacular. Like, just the humor just seems like just right, where you have like a whole bunch of Spider-Mans who are like all clowns and funny, but there's all these, like, they have like the noir Spidey makes an appearance, they've got Spider-Gwen, Spider-Ham, Miles Morales, Peter. Like, dude, it just
I love the part where he's like, do animals talk in this universe? Because
like,
I don't want to freak him out.
Yeah, I don't want to freak him out. My favorite thing was in that last portion where Miles is like dragging Peter, and they're like flying through the city, and the police are following him, and he's like, yeah, we've got some spider guy dragging a dead homeless man around New York. I was like, yes, like this is gonna be so perfect. It's gonna be so good. Yeah, the animation looks awesome. Like, actually, I know the trailers kind of are very on par with what it's, but to actually see like a whole segment of like what it's gonna be like, and it's just, it is the epitome of a comic book movie. It just looks awesome.
Like I can't even like peg. I feel like the animation style hasn't been done before. It's like,
I agree.
It's not quite Pixar because it still looks like 2D in some ways, but it's like more 2D than like a cartoon. So it's like but it's not cell shaded either. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like cell shading without the stark outlines almost.
Right. It almost reminds me of the animation they did with Claudia with a Chance of Meatballs. Like, it's, if you see them side by side, like the actual stylizing of the characters looks very similar.
Okay.
But I think the animation looks more choppy. Like, stylistically, they made it more choppy because just some of the things, like when they're talking or their body movements are more, they're not like fluid. Like, DreamWorks stuff, I feel like tends, or with Claudia with the Chance of Meatballs, if you watch it, everyone's like made of rubber and they're like kind of like flinging all over the place and stuff. Whereas this, they're almost like not robotic, but it's like anime-ish, where it's like couple frames, bam, like into the next thing.
It's more frantic and less fluid.
Yeah, so it's gonna be great.
Yeah,
so
I'm stoked for that.
I love you, Dad.
This is a good year for Spider-Man
Dude.
fans.
Dude, let me tell you. Oh, so stoked. It is not a good year for Venom fans.
Well, it depends.
Depends. I to be honest, like I've been thinking about it, so we're jumping into the Venom review.
Do we want to start off spoiler-free general impressions and then
Yes.
jump into a more spoiler territory?
Yes.
Okay.
And I will clearly mark the spoiler time frames in the description. It'll be right at the top. So please, like when you see this review, like don't be like, oh, I don't know where they are, because they'll be right there. And we will also say verbally very clearly like when the spoilers start. So with that, do you want to go first?
Sure.
Go for it.
My opinion might be less.
I think you're probably going to be
less-
more in the middle than I am. But.
Yeah, I think. So going into it, my hype levels kind of like roller coastered coming into this movie. I think initially when they announced that they were doing a Venom movie and they showed some clips, I was like, "This is dope!" Like this look and Tom Hardy.
Yep.
I was like, Tom Hardy was awesome as Bane and Batman. He's been awesome in other movies, so like I'm stoked for this. And then I saw other trailers and I was like, I don't know what this is gonna be. Now I'm like kind of skeptical. And I think going into the movie, I was just like, I have zero expectations. Like my expectations are basically like Spider-Man 3 level expectations right now.
Yeah.
And so like I think after having watched it, like I came out of the movie thinking like that was actually a pretty fun movie. Like it definitely defied those expectations in some ways, but there was a lot of moments throughout where it was like, this is really good. And then other moments where I'm like, this is kind of annoying. Like, I don't understand these motivations. Like, why are they doing what they're doing? And it was kind of like the culmination of everything was like, that was a fun action movie, but it wasn't close to being on the level of, I would say it's probably better than DC, some of the DC movies, but
Yeah,
it
I would
definitely
agree.
wasn't in the league with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that's my general non-spoilery impressions. I think it's worth seeing for anybody who's a fan of like superhero films in general, or even just action films. I think there's some pretty dope action scenes, and some of the scenes with Venom were pretty sick. I think so. I think it was decent. I'd give it a decent rating, whatever number that ends up being.
Sure. You good? Anything else? I don't want to undercut or jump in.
I think that's it. Maybe
Okay.
depending on what you say, maybe
Yeah.
we can engage.
Sure. I need to be very clear. There were parts of this movie that were phenomenal. Like some of the best stylistic cinema things I've seen in modern movies that were done that were fantastic. Like Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock, and then Eddie Brock with Venom and as Venom, phenomenal. Like he did a fantastic job. Like there are a couple scenes, and we'll kind of get into those, like the specific technical things in the spoiler portion.
Yeah.
But there were some things that he embodied the struggle of like having another entity inside of you, like so brilliantly in the world, and the scenes that they crafted to show that were awesome. Like I thought those were some of the best parts in the movie, and the parts in the movie where I was like, all right, like this is awesome. Like this is really good.
Yeah.
Like this is great. But then they come through with this other crap where they like basically turned it into a Seinfeld / good cop, bad cop rom-com. And I was like, what the frick is this movie?
Yeah.
Like, I'm getting all like hyped because partially I just want to play it out, because it's like there are some moments where I was like, I literally feel like I'm watching a like Billy Crystal romantic comedy where it's like, you know, Eddie Brock was down on his luck and blah, blah, blah. And his life is falling apart because he's an idiot. And it's like, have a good life, Eddie. Actual quote. And then, and his girlfriend or his fiance breaks up with him. Have a nice life, Eddie. Actually, back-to-back quote.
Yep.
Like 30 seconds apart in the movie. And then is like, but he stumbles on this alien symbiote and now they're best friends. Like, if you took that movie in certain portions and you took out all the like cinematic action movie music and you just put
like lighthearted,
like Wes
goofy
Anderson
music.
styles like tunes behind it, it would be a buddy cop comedy. Like that's what that movie was. And that's fine. Like I think if they would have actually committed to doing that and like making it this kind of like dark buddy cop comedy, I think it would have been really awesome and it would have like felt cohesive. But holy frick, from an actual stylistic, technical making of this movie, there were certain things where I was like, we just went from like A to Z in like 2 minutes. Like, whoa, like slow it down. Like the times that I thought the movie were at its strongest were when it seemed to like breathe. Like you could tell that like they wanted to get it. This is what it felt like sometimes is the first like 20 minutes, it was like, okay, we're just trying to get to Venom. Like we're just getting through it. You all know this has to get here. We're just getting to Venom. But they did that stuff so poorly that like it was like you just don't care. Like you have no care in like when everything starts happening to Eddie and stuff like that. I was like, I don't care. Like I know you're just trying to get to Venom when Venom shows up. Like that's what it felt like. But then there's the parts where it actually gets there and then it breathes and it seems to be like, okay, this is where we really wanted to get excited. And I'm like, this is great. And that's like some of those scenes that we'll talk about later. But then immediately after, it's like, okay, now we're just going to get to the end of the movie because we got to get to the sequel. And it was just like, holy cow.
Yeah, I think like thinking about it in some ways, like it almost felt like a BVS in some ways because...
That's a great way to phrase it.
Like... You could kind of infer like what they're intending characters' motivations to be, but they didn't always like actually make us believe that would be their motivation. Like like the so-called bad guy or like Eddie Brock. Like it was almost like it was just like you said. They went from A to Z so many times that it was just artificially building these character motivations. Where it was like it would have been almost better if you didn't show us any of this and we just like. He was mysteriously this way or something. Like it was kind of like they were shoehorning in a lot of stuff for the sake of the movie coming next. Basically, This movie felt like a BVS to a Justice League sort of thing. Yeah, in some ways.
Yeah,
but I still think it was better than BVS. But I think it had some of those similar missteps where it was like trying to shoehorn in like way too much stuff than was actually necessary to serve what it was meant to serve. So
yeah, I think honestly that's a very fair comparison. I would say I enjoyed it more than Batman versus Superman just because I think overall I think there was just less going on, and so like you got to kind of like be in those moments.
There were moments to breathe, like you said,
which
were phenomenal.
Yeah, and there's things in Batman versus Superman that were fine. But I think overall, I think even in my mind, I would say that Venom is closer to my opinion of Justice League, where there were parts of Justice League that I thought were fantastic. And I think like they built characters well, they gave them some motivation, they let them interact and be together and be present and have to just kind of do stuff. But then there were other moments where it was like, you are just flying like, oh, here's the bad guy. Oh, the bad guy did this. Oh, and it's like, that happened in 2 minutes.
Yep.
And it was just horrible pacing. Whereas I think even with like Batman vs Superman, I just have found no redeeming qualities in that movie. But we don't need to go there. But I think, in my personal opinion, if anyone is familiar with what I've said about Justice League, which is like I think we talked about it when it first came out because we ended up seeing it pretty recently around that time frame. But I thought it was fine. Good things there. They built characters. They like there's some amazing moments in that movie, and then there's the rest of it. And I think that's exactly what I feel about Venom is there are amazing moments in Venom, and then there was the other stuff that was just kind of like there. And to be honest, like in a way, I'm actually more, we had joked previously that this was kind of the test of like, if this is bad, I'm not seeing the sequel. But because of what they had to do, they could potentially be making a really good sequel. And I think because of, and we'll talk about why that is in the spoiler portion, but I think it could be much better than this one, or it has the potential.
I think depending on what the second movie ends up being, this movie was unnecessary.
I 100% agree.
I think if the second movie becomes what I'm expecting it to become, we didn't need to know anything that happened in this first movie.
100%.
We don't need to know the backstory of how Eddie and Venom bond. The bad guy was completely unnecessary, across the board.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I think
that's a fantastic point.
It's funny because we had said if this one's bad, we're not going to see any of the other two, because a trilogy is a joke if you're going to make a bad movie. But they somehow succeeded in making me want to still see the second movie. So it's it's weird. I don't know.
Want to jump into
we can go into spoilers.
Okay. This is about 30-minute mark. I'll put the exact time code in the podcast description. It'll be right at the top. Spoiler time. I'll just put spoiler time frame and then from blank to blank. And then I'll let you guys know when we're done. So other than that, we'll jump into spoilers as of right now. So the scenes that I was remarking that were fantastic is what happens is there's this ship in the beginning of the movie that crashes on Earth, and there's all these symbiotes in it, and one gets out and it goes and does this, and then another gets out, and I honestly was kind of confused of how Venom got out, because there was this cluster of other ones, but then basically that one that was went to the little girl and the old lady was Riot, but then Venom was in the homeless lady. That's right. Yeah. Okay. I was I gotta remember all of these because they were kind of all over the place. Some of the best moments in that entire movie so Eddie breaks into the facility, gets attacked by this homeless lady that he was interacting with earlier, which I actually thought that was an interesting touch. I think that was a very crafty way to kind of introduce a minor personal connection. But he gets infected, he goes home, and all of a sudden he just it's they wrote it incredibly well, in my opinion, in making him, it's he's having a mental breakdown, because he's already at the bottom of the tent pole of life is falling apart, lost his fiance, lost his job, he's miserable, can't succeed at anything, he's infamous everywhere because of who he is. And now he not only is that happening in his brain, he's got all these mental and emotional issues. Now he has this thing telling him things in his head, and he's like, "What? I don't get that."
Yep.
So it isn't just okay, yeah, and there's a voice talking to him now, but how they shot it, the shot scale. There's moments where they cut in really close, and his face is really blurry, or he's slurring his words, and there's just shouts from Venom coming in his head, and you can hear him clearly, and he's shut up, but he doesn't even know who he's talking to, and he's but I'm not talking to anyone.
And it's funny how Venom can actually perceive things that are happening. He's don't open that door.
Yeah. And so there were things like that were super interesting, and and then there's the moment where he's hungry, eat, and he's what? And he just kind of freaks out, and then he opens the and there's the old chicken, and he's eating it, and then he goes and he throws up,
and he's what is happening to me?
Yeah. And so there are moments like that, how they shot it and the progression, and just his just the manic actions that he was taking and all the things that were going on. I was this is really well done, and Tom Hardy's doing an amazing job of portraying this. Mm-hmm. And then even better on that is he goes to his ex-fiance and her boyfriend, who are having dinner at this fancy restaurant with lobsters and stuff, and he goes in, and he's all sweaty and disheveled, and he's he's frantically telling her about and there's this thing, and look, I have proof, and he's freaking out, but then all of a sudden he's I need to eat, and so he's starts grabbing food off of the plate, and then Venom's talking to him, and he's shouting at it, and then people are whoa, whatever, you need help, and then the boyfriend steps up, and then Venom's eat him, and he's no, and so he shoves the guy back, and it was just the whole progression was just awesome. And then all of a sudden he's is it hot, is this, and he goes and sits in the lobster cage, and he's just it was just so unsettling, but in a way that I was this is what you do with this, this is how you show someone wrestling with what Venom is, and those two things interacting. And I thought that was really well done.
Yep.
And then also later on, you have Venom kind of telling Eddie that, like, you know, I'm also kind of like a loser on our planet, and so that's why I bonded with you, and like I think it's interesting that we have this power when we're together. We're these two losers who are like bonded together.
Yeah.
And to me, that statement, I think, is what should have shaped the entire movie instead of what seemed to shape the entire movie, which is this just needs to be a movie. Like it's the most generic statement I can say, but like the villain was atrocious. Not necessarily the actor, but like the writing for this movie was so bad. Go for it.
That was my biggest problem. Like every scene with that guy in it, I was like, I don't believe this. Like I just don't believe that this guy can get away with what he's doing.
Right.
Like, if it was set in some weird dystopian future, like maybe 15 years from now when like corporations have taken over more power or something, but it was like if Elon Musk just started deciding to
do human testing and like bury bodies.
Somehow nobody, like, he can just get away with it. Like,
yeah, and then this like famous reporter breaks the story and like no one does anything about it.
Yeah, it was just like really unbelievable. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It like you said, it's just like this needs to happen. Like this movie just needs to happen. And I'm in my mind, I'm like, no, it didn't.
Yeah.
Just make the second one.
And if, in a weird way, I feel like this movie would have been more interesting if they just didn't have a villain. Like, because Venom...
Like, Venom is kind of like the villain and the hero.
Yeah, well, in a weird way, it's like, if you had constructed it that way, you let Tom Hardy and you let Eddie and Venom be the focal point of the movie. And I feel like they got lost in the awesome moments of them interacting and like having to like figure out how to work together in this like very unequal situation. Like they had to figure it out, but those moments were so few and far between, and they were so frantic, and they're just trying to get to the next set piece that there's all this other stuff that I'm like, why do you have this freaky scientist dude? Like he is the most he was written to be the most cliche, like it was literally like in the Incredibles when Frozone, the first one, when Frozone and Mr. Incredible are sitting in the car, and Frozone's kind of talking about, yeah, I was fighting this villain, and we're doing this, and like, you'll never believe what happened. Then Mr. Incredible's like, he starts monologuing, and he starts monologuing, he's telling me how I'm bad about this, and I'm like, they literally took the whole thing that Disney made fun of in superhero stuff, and they made him a focal point villain, which is like, I'm doing humanity a service. I'm telling you, like, all we do is we eat and we take, and we need to evolve, and we're not good enough, and we need to go, and we need to, and it was just like, you are the most like bare bones, generic, average, like
they
most
just took all of the enemy like motivations you could
out of
have
everything.
And put them into one dude.
Yeah. And then every time he's on screen, he's telling you the same stuff, or like, oh, it was just so bad.
Yeah, I think overall, I think that's my biggest gripe with the movie is in some ways it felt like it understood why people wanted to see this type of movie, and in other ways it felt so out of touch and like it was trying to be a movie from the early 2000s.
Yep.
Like the relationship stuff, like nobody wants to see that anymore. Like
Agreed.
Thor 1 and 2 showed us that nobody wants to see that anymore, and like, or at least if it's done so poorly, like relationships aren't terrible in movies. It's just that's like an early 2000s like rom-com like sort of thing that people aren't interested in anymore, I feel like, in superhero movies. And then like the villain just felt like it was trying to be like an MCU level villain like Killmonger or Thanos or something like that, but they just don't understand why those villains work in some ways.
Yeah.
And so like
100%.
the movie just felt like it was trying to live in two worlds at once, and it kind of made the movie feel lackluster because of that. But then, like you said, the moments that it shines make me want more, which is why I'm willing to see the second movie, because I'm like, if they can figure out what worked in this movie and what didn't for the next time, I'm hoping they can improve on the formula.
Yep.
So
it's
so hard to peg. Like, there it is literally like my levels of hype going up to the movie was like how I felt during the movie. Like during the points where like Eddie wasn't on screen and it was like the girlfriend and the boyfriend or like the villain, I was like down here like
This is
Okay,
so boring.
get on with it.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to hear your monologues. We don't need
Yeah.
to hear your dumb, misguided motivations. We don't need to hear how you're doing 50,000 illegal things that
exactly.
nobody is somehow finding out. Like,
Right.
But then the moments when Eddie was like talking with Venom, or he was Venom, and Venom's like running up the side of a building, and like it like those times I was like, this is dope. Like, what? Like, I almost felt like I was watching two different movies. Like,
That's
like
honestly
a
what
boring,
it felt
dumb,
like.
rom-com, and then like a dope, like almost like action buddy cop superhero
Like
film.
almost like a dark buddy cop comedy.
Yeah,
in a
like
way.
I in some ways, like I feel like it would be an interesting dark buddy cop comedy, like, but the buddies are the same person, like inside of his body. And I feel like that could be interesting.
But then they like took it and then they like put some other generic 90s like I said, like Billy Crystal romantic comedy where, you know, there were literally moments where I was like, if you just took this movie and you put these, you know, like a ukulele score behind it, you'd be laughing because it's like, I'm watching I Love You, Man. Like, there's just moments where it's like Eddie Brock who's down on his luck and blah, blah, blah. And here's the symbiote and it changes everything. And now he's got to figure out how to live with this other thing inside of him. And it like, I could not stop laughing during certain portions. Or I had to like control myself in the theater because there were points where I was like, who thought that was a good idea? Who said that was okay? They should be fired. Like, nobody in their right mind should use the same line back to back in an
They used it 3 times
They
total,
used it 3 times. Like,
have a nice life.
it was just like, have a nice life, Eddie. And it was like you're kidding me.
In some ways, like the payoff between the first time that he said it to him and the final time when he like basically was like burnt to death, like in the early 2000s, that would have gone over really well. Like, oh, I get it. Like, because he said it to him first, and then now he's getting to say it back to him. Like,
right,
it's kind of like that.
See how
that
clever we
classic,
are?
like revenge story.
Exactly.
But like, they said it 3 times in the movie, and I remember me and you both looked at each other and just burst out laughing when she said it to him the second time.
Gosh.
Like, have a nice life, Eddie. And we're like,
throws the box down. It was just like, they didn't. Like, shame on them. Like, shame on you. Shame. It literally was like this whole and just like the montage. Like, I think this is what really pissed me off is they basically turned Eddie Brock into like a YouTube reporter. Like, he came off as like a YouTube channel, and it just, again, the out of touch feeling was like, don't make him what feels to be like a YouTube news channel who's funded by like MSNBC. Like, that's what it seemed like. He's like, hey, this is Eddie Brock on the field, and there's a bunch of dead people in this pile. And, like, apparently the city doesn't care about them. And it was just like, they have that. And
yeah,
you're like, what is this?
It legitimately felt like one of those like almost not like alt-right, but like one of those kinds of YouTube reporters where it's like, but like. We're talking to lefties outside this rally, and like we're showing them how stupid they are. It was it felt like that from the perspective of like a 60-year-old person who doesn't understand YouTube.
Exactly. Yes. I just was laughing so hard.
In some ways, I had to like construct my own idea of Eddie throughout the film. Like, I understood who Eddie should be because of what they were trying to give me.
Right.
But I had to look past the things they were giving me. Like,
trying to do.
Okay, I see what you're trying to tell me. You're trying to tell me he's like this gung-ho, like almost like vigilante reporter who like does whatever he needs to do to get to the truth. And I'm like, okay, like
I dig it.
That's what you're going for. You're not showing me that.
Doing that.
You're showing me an idiot.
Correct. You're showing like a frat boy again who like got his dad to be like, hey dad, give me an internship at MSNBC, and he's like, okay Donnie, and like there he goes.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, there's a bunch of dead people in this landfill. Apparently the city doesn't care about them because they've been rotting here for years.
Yeah.
This is Eddie Brock, and you're like, what? Like, what is this? It just. So there were moments like that where I'm like, this is so bad. Like, the scene when his neighbor who like is like shredding on the guitar. Like,
I thought that was gonna actually do something.
I
and
know.
All of a sudden he's just like,
he's just like,
and then it just switches to the next scene,
and then it just cuts to the next scene, and I was like, what just happened?
And you and I just looked at each other again, and we're like, we just bust a gut.
I was like, that moment, I was like, that I'm literally looking at Ross. Like, that was the most Ross moment from Friends. I hate that show. You lost me there. Like, you literally destroyed this. Like, oh, that was one of those moments. I was like, you lost me. I'm disconnected again. And then it was like, oh, this is kind of okay. I'm driving. Like,
and it's funny because like you can see why they thought they should put that in there, because then it comes back.
It pays off later.
It pays off later, but it's like you didn't need to put that in there. Like we would have gotten it had it not. Like we would have gotten what happened without that weird unnecessary foreshadowing. Like,
or what you do is like an even better evolution on that joke, which is basically Venom is sensitive to high decibels or volume. So then like the guy starts shredding on his guitar and he freaks out, and so then Eddie goes over there, and then like he's like, whatever, man. And then like Venom flashes and he's like, okay. And, you know, like have Eddie in that moment, instead of standing there like an idiot, like he's about to crap himself, like actually go walk and knock on the door and be like, hey man, can you just like turn off? He's like, man, F off. And just like slams the door on him.
That's what I was expecting to happen. But he just screamed and then it switched to the next.
He's standing there having an aneurysm. And he's like, it's like, what is happening? It's just like, you people don't even know what you're doing. You're like, even if that would have happened, where it's like, okay, we're setting up this joke very clearly, like clearly this is gonna pay off, and then it does, and then it's kind of funny because it's like, okay, like I didn't realize you were gonna eat my face off. But in that, instead he literally is just like, and then it isn't even like he goes in and slams the door. It just cuts to the villain again, and I'm like, where is this movie going? Oh my lord! It just was so bad.
Yep.
But that's the thing, is like I want it, like we're picking on it because it's
funny because
like,
there's so many like frustrating parts to it, but yet when the movie rolled,
there were things that were great.
I felt like, that was fun. Like it was not as bad as I thought it would be.
Yeah,
I think like there was enough good stuff that kept me along with it, that like I was willing to forgive most of the mishaps and stuff. But like they're still in my head of like, if this same type of out of touchness is in the second movie, then it's going to miss the mark again, and I'm hoping it doesn't. Yeah. And I want to say this too, because like I'm picking on it. I have an overall negative view of it, and I think it's not a good movie. However, I do completely see that there are things that people like. I think I didn't have any expectations going in, because I was seeing everywhere that everyone was like, this is a horrible movie, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. So I kind of was expecting it to be bad, but I was not expecting the really highlight moments that I really love to be there. Yeah. And so I can totally see that if you just walked into this movie and were like, frick if I care, like what happens, like I'm just here to see the movie, and it's like, oh, that's fine. Totally, like I think everyone who did enjoy it, like, you have every reason to. It was a fun movie, like you said. It was very like early 2000s, like late 90s, reminiscent of just like action. It was kind of like those early Daredevil, Sam Raimi, Spider-Man days. Like that's what this movie felt with. Or the X-Men movies. So exactly. So like, I totally think if you're in that vein and you did enjoy those movies to some extent, or you're able to find enjoyment in those movies, you're gonna like this. It's gonna be fun. Like you're gonna be like, yeah, that was corny and cheesy and it was campy, but like whatever. I think where I'm so like amped and I'm like angry about it is this movie and the things that they did so well. It was almost like this was like a first draft. Like in a first draft, there's always that huge nugget that is like, this is what you should do. This is what the entire thing should be about. And I feel like they didn't do that. Like they just took the first run at it and were like, we need a villain. The villain needs to do this. They need to try to get to this goal. And we need to have a bunch of Venom and it basically felt like the original idea for the movie was what the second movie is going to be. Yes. And they're like, well, we want it to be a trilogy because we want more money. So what if we don't put Carnage, because everybody thinks it's going to be Carnage? What if we don't put him in the first movie so everybody comes and sees the first movie, and then we really do what we want to do in the second movie, and then we build that into the third movie? And it almost felt like this movie was just a way of adding on unnecessary, like I said before, like unnecessary things, even though I bet the first idea was Venom versus Carnage, and they're like, well, we don't want to do that right away. We want to save that. It almost just felt like they're trying to get more money. Right. Like, it needs to be a trilogy. It needs to be a trilogy. Like, no, it doesn't need to be a trilogy. Yeah. Trilogies are That's an MCU thing.
Well, and I think it can be if you earn it. Like, I think, again, I'm bummed for this movie because it could have been fantastic. Like, I do think it could have been really, really, really good if they would have shot it a little more creepily, if they would have spent more time making it a little more, like, horror-esque. And
that's another thing is I think it should have been rated R.
Yes.
I think
it's a huge
I think restricting
issue.
the PG-13 was a bad move.
Yeah, because I think, like, you play off the fact that, like, Venom is a bloodthirsty beast, and, like, they did that a few times, but I think if you kind of make that the gimmick of, like, Eddie doesn't want this to happen, and he's like, you know, and in a way, like, I predicted, and I do stand to what I anticipated this was going to be. Wasn't MCU amazing, wasn't DC bad, it was, like, Amazing Spider-Man 2 quality. It was just very fine. Like, didn't do anything revolutionary. It was just like, nah. I wish it would have spent more time on the interesting parts, which is just like, let Eddie Brock and Venom interact. Like, let that tell the story, and like, let that be the focal point. Like, let him be a reporter, and then like, let that be his downfall. That like Venom is the one who gets him fired because he like convinces him to do something bad, or like Venom takes over in a moment of weakness and like kills somebody, you know, and then all of a sudden Eddie is like, I literally can't justify that. And then he has to like earn his respect back. Whereas why I laughed at it so hard was they treated his downfall into, you know, I have nothing and I'm a loser, the way they do it in like romantic comedies, which is why I gave that comparison, is they basically just were like, you know, one selfish action and Eddie's life falls apart. And like, that was it. Like, that was basically how they wrote it. And I think I am genuinely really interested to see the second one. And I think, so I think the biggest spoiler is the post-credit scene is, and I quote from some random lady in the theater, "Oh God."
it's Woody Harrelson with like a dark red, like, curly wig,
like clown looking wig, and it was just funny because like it's at a distance and like Brock is walking in and you know he looks up, he's like hey Eddie, and there's this lady in the back who's just like, oh God. Like it was fantastic. That was so funny. But I can't agree with your point more, that I think what's probably going to end up happening is the second movie should have just been the first movie, or they should have put a little bit of backstory into this second one and then let that be the whole movie. Whereas I think like they felt this obligation to create a starter point for this instead of just they
felt an obligation to have a villain.
Yeah,
which I don't think is necessary because Venom is
that's
sort
kind of the
villain.
whole point.
The tension is that Venom's a villain and Eddie's not.
Right.
And that should have been the movie. That should have been the central conflict, is Eddie figuring out how to work,
how to like
with
tame him
symbiote,
in a way. Yeah.
And then going into the next movie, okay, now we're working together. How do we defeat this even worse thing that's trying to destroy what we have both now
like
sworn?
fought? And
because at the end of the movie, like, that's what they decide. They decide, okay, we're going to work together. Like, we're both losers in our respective places. Like, we want what's best now for whatever. And that was another thing, whereas I didn't fully believe that Venom had come to that conclusion, because it was like almost a little bit
again,
it was a little
happened.
bit too rushed.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that should have been what the movie was them coming to terms with each other, if that was going to be the conclusion, which it was.
Yeah.
And so I don't believe what happened in the movie warranted the conclusion they came to.
Yeah.
I think that the movie was just a reason to get to that conclusion.
Yeah.
So that the second movie could happen.
Yep. If I had to sum up my opinion of what this should have been and why I didn't like it, I think this movie should have been about, and I think I actually kind of predicted it when we had given our initial thoughts of like why I think we thought it was going to be good or bad. My whole thing was that I thought the movie's quality was going to hinge on how they handled Eddie Brock and Venom being bloodthirsty and Eddie Brock being a human being who doesn't want to kill people just for the sake of it. And I think they did a really bad job. I think when he and Eddie had to kind of talk in literal terms of like, we have to figure out and solve a situation, that was really good. But I think to your point,
there wasn't enough of it.
The movie, this is what the movie was. The movie was, there's a villain, we have to stop him. Why? Because this is how it was written.
Because he's bad.
Because he's bad, quote unquote. What the movie should have been about instead is Eddie Brock taming Venom. That's what it should have been about, and it's not. That's not what it was, or at least like the 2 minutes that were involved over the course of like the 2 hour long.
That's
movie.
the thing is like the conclusion of the movie is Eddie Brock did tame Venom,
right?
And you're like, but
exactly, he didn't do anything.
Isn't warranted. Like,
yes,
nothing happened. Other than like that little exchange between them in the forest that was like a little heartfelt, like, oh, I was a loser in my community and I've decided to help humanity.
As they're like running into the final fight.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, that doesn't make me
So I agree. I think the movie should have been about Eddie taming Venom and almost Venom making Eddie more cynical in some way, like almost kind of like mutually.
Yes.
Because he's a symbiote.
Yep.
They're mutually affecting each other in
Yep.
some ways, but it kind of comes to a symbiotic relationship where they can work together for the best good for both of them.
Yeah.
And that's what the conclusion was, and what I think he's going to go into the second movie being, but they didn't actually do that in the first movie at all.
Yeah, to your point, like they didn't earn it. Like they didn't do anything to earn the fact that Eddie and Venom actually are coexisting and choosing to coexist with each other now.
Yeah.
The way it felt at the end was they're choosing to coexist because there's a sequel coming, and if they're going to be arguing the whole time, that's not going to be interesting.
So to be honest, my recommendation would be don't watch the first one.
Just go see the second one.
Just watch the second one with a clear mind.
Yeah, actually, like, yeah.
And then if you're still confused, then go watch the first one. But I don't think it'll clarify.
No, yeah. Honestly,
just listen to this podcast and then watch the second one.
Yeah. No, I honestly, like, I back that up. Like, I actually wholeheartedly agree. I think I'm kind of frustrated because I feel like I'm going to be tainted seeing the second one. But I feel like in a way I might actually like the second one more just because they just botched all the stuff to basically establish the fact that Eddie and Venom are Venom and like that's what they do. But then like, you know, I don't know. It's gonna be really dope to see him and Carnage go toe to toe. But I think what the problem is that if I had again to predict it, it's gonna be like Carnage just kills. Wow, that's bad. And then Venom's like, well, we need to stop him. And so they fight. And like, that's going to be the gist of it. Whereas like, it could be amazing. Again, it could be amazing if philosophically there is something in Carnage that is like, we're just like Venom. How can you not see like, we're designed to just eat. Like, that's what we do. Like, we're just gonna, you know, we just kill. Like that's just what we are survivors. You as a symbiote are a survivor. These humans, they don't know how to survive. Like I found a host who's willing to like survive with me and like do all this stuff, or I don't know, however they're going to do it. But I am nervous that they're going to take some weird, again, this like the same thing that they did with the first one. I'm afraid that they're going to make the movie about everything that is uninteresting, while giving like 20% of the movie to the things that actually are really interesting.
That we want to see. Yeah.
Exactly. But
yeah, who knows?
Man, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I'm just, I'm glad I can laugh about it at least because there are just points where I was like, what is this?
Yeah, I think I walked out of it thinking like, I'm glad I watched this. I probably will never watch it again.
Yeah.
Granted, I'll probably buy it because it's
I'm not like
I want to have a full superhero thing eventually.
Agreed. Yes.
But like,
I will buy it and
It's gonna have a dope steelbook too, probably.
Yes.
So
I'm gonna buy it and I'm gonna watch it with people to be like, hey, check out this bad movie.
Yeah.
I feel
it's
like
one of those movies where it's enjoyable enough that you can watch it, but it's bad enough where you can have a good laugh.
Exactly. Yes. It's honestly, it's probably gonna be like the like the 90s like Mortal Kombat. Like, you know, it's gonna be like one of those movies in retrospect where it's like, this movie is so bad, but it's got a place in my heart. Like that's kind of what it's feeling like.
Yeah.
But if you enjoy it, or if you did enjoy it, like I said, I totally stand by the fact that like,
shoot us an email and let us know why you enjoyed it.
Yeah,
we'd love to hear.
I know we did have an interaction with Dave from Imperius, who we're gonna be chilling with next weekend, and like I think he had some great points too. Like that's why I'm very like, I just was laughing at the parts that I was like, I could not get over these certain moments, and these certain moments that I've been conditioned to feel as like, that felt like a moment that I saw in like I Love You Man or The Notebook. Like that felt like, or, you know, and I'm like, that should not be the feeling I'm getting from a dark superhero comedy or comic movie, you know, but whatever. It was what it was, and
it is what it is.
It is what it is. So that's the gist.
That's the gist.
Anything else?
I don't think so. I think that was it.
Well, I think so that we should shout out our listener Brandon, correct? Amundo?
Ben?
Ben.
I think it's Ben, yeah.
I was like, I forgot
His
which
brother's
brother.
Brandon, yeah.
The brothers.
brothers.
Shout out to our listener Ben. Sorry I confused you with your brother for supporting the pod by getting a shirt. That's awesome. Thanks for that. I was thinking about it, and I know we don't say this enough, but genuinely we really are thankful for people who listen and just like take the time to just kind of I don't know,
it's
listen
fun
to us
talking
rant.
to people, even though most of them are just our friends who listen to it. But it's fun talking to people about pop
Mhm.
culture now that we're more in this space. So it's fun hearing people who actually listen to it. And even my brother was messaging me the other day. He said he was listening to the Cyberpunk one, I think, and he started listening to Beartooth because we were like talking about it. And he's like, "Yeah, I decided to check it out because you guys talked about it." So I'm like,
Cool.
That's
Yeah.
cool, man. Like, I'm
Yeah.
glad people are actually listening to
Yeah,
our
right?
opinions.
Yeah. So
So it's cool to hear that people are actually engaging with it. So we're
Definitely.
very thankful for everybody who tunes in and listens.
For
so.
sure. Yeah. So on that, you can check out our merch and stuff. I'll just shout that out first because of Ben, who bought a shirt. So thanks, Ben.
Yeah.
You can find those on Threadless and Redbubble. And
Just search Pop Culture Punks, I think.
Yes. Yeah. I think in Threadless, it's a little more confusing because you have to go they're not listed by design. You have to search by artist shop. But if you search by the artist shop, you'll be able to find it there. Otherwise, it's pinned if you go to our Twitter page. Our Threadless store is pinned right to the top. So if you just Google Pop Culture Punks Twitter and go to our thread, it'll be right there. So you can check that out. Redbubble, they've got it too. I haven't bought a Threadless shirt yet, but all the stuff I bought from Redbubble is super high quality.
Yeah,
and
Redbubble's classic.
It's great.
Classic stuff.
If there are any designs that you'd like to see or any things that you would dig wearing and would like to wear in support of the show, let us know. Let me know, and you can send those or other comments about things that you've been listening to, watching, reading, enjoying in general, or recommendations that you'd like to share to popculturepunks@gmail.com. You can also follow us on social media on Twitter @popculturepunks, on Instagram @popculturepunks. I don't know if we've really done anything on Instagram. We're just not very photogenic. We'll figure something out.
Not good at social media.
in general. And then you can listen to the show on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and we just saw this week that Spotify just opened the gates. So we're going to I'll send that in as soon as we wrap up this episode. So you'll be able to find the show on Spotify as well, which is pretty awesome. And then you can follow each of us individually on Twitter @SixWingCreative, which is me, Josh. You can follow Phil I am Phil Sorensen. Zach is @C San Pellegrino. And Chris is @Chris of the Vast. And I think that's it. I did everything out of order, so I'm trying to remember. Why? I don't know why. I don't know why. I
got nothing.
I don't know why.
No comment.
No comment. That's it.
That's all, folks.
Thanks again for tuning in with your ears and listening to our ramblings. That's our Venom review. Again, all the spoiler and time slots will be listed in the description. And with that, we bid you all a fond cowabunga.
Yeah.
Voices in my heart tell me to throw it all away, toss it in the wind and forget yesterday. But the crowd comes singing back with that same old song. You've got bills you gotta pay. What about job security? But I've been dreaming about packing it all up, 'cause the war in me just won't relent till there's nothing